The old asylum stood like a shadowy behemoth on the outskirts of town. Built in the early 1900s, it once housed hundreds of patients. Over the years, stories of mistreatment and mysterious deaths emerged. By the 1970s, it was abandoned. Since then, it has been a magnet for thrill-seekers and paranormal enthusiasts. Legends say the spirits of the tortured still roam its halls. Some claim to have seen ghostly apparitions. Others speak of strange noises echoing through the empty rooms. The asylum's history is shrouded in darkness and despair. I decided to spend 24 hours inside this haunted structure. Armed with a flashlight, a camera, and my nerves of steel, I entered the asylum. Little did I know, I was about to step into a living nightmare. The air was thick with an unsettling silence as I crossed the threshold. The sense of foreboding was palpable, making the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. The main entrance led to a large, empty hall. The floor was littered with debris. Broken furniture and shattered glass lay strewn about. The walls were covered in peeling paint and graffiti. My footsteps echoed ominously in the cavernous space. I ventured deeper into the asylum. Each step felt heavier than the last. The shadows seemed to move, playing tricks on my mind. It was as if the building itself was alive, watching my every move. Suddenly a door slammed shut behind me. I spun around, heart pounding. There was no one there, just the oppressive silence and the dim light from my flashlight. I pressed on, determined not to let fear take over. But the deeper I went, the more the atmosphere changed. It was as if I had crossed into another realm where reality and nightmare intertwined. The silence was deafening. Every creak and groan of the old building sounded like a scream. I could hear my own heartbeat, loud and insistent in the stillness. It felt like the asylum was a living entity, breathing and whispering around me. I entered what used to be a patient ward. The beds were rusted and decayed. Old medical equipment lay abandoned, covered in dust. The windows were broken, letting in slivers of moonlight that cast eerie shadows on the walls. As I explored, I felt a sudden chill. The temperature dropped significantly. My breath became visible in the cold air. I heard a faint whisper, like someone calling my name. I froze, straining to hear more. The whispering grew louder, more insistent. It seemed to come from all directions. Panic set in as I realized I was not alone. The asylum was alive with the voices of the past, and they were trying to reach out to me. The whispers became more distinct, forming words and phrases. "Help me! Why are you here? Leave now!" The voices were filled with pain and despair. I tried to block them out, but they seemed to penetrate my very soul. I stumbled into an old operating room. The sight was horrifying. Rusty surgical tools lay scattered on the floor. The operating table was stained with dark, dried blood. The air was thick with the scent of decay and rot. In the corner of the room, I saw a shadowy figure. It was barely visible, a dark shape that seemed to flicker in and out of existence. My flashlight flickered, casting erratic beams of light that only added to the terror. I backed away slowly, my heart racing. The figure did not move, but its presence was overwhelming. I felt like I was being watched, judged. The asylum was testing my resolve, pushing me to the brink of madness. Section 5. Unearthly Encounters. I left the operating room in a hurry, my pulse racing. The corridors seemed to stretch endlessly, twisting and turning like a labyrinth. Every corner I turned, I expected to see something horrifying. My mind was playing tricks on me, feeding my paranoia. I reached a staircase leading to the basement. The air grew colder as I descended. The darkness was almost tangible, pressing in from all sides. My flashlight barely pierced the gloom, creating an atmosphere of dread. In the basement, I found an old storage room. Boxes and crates were piled haphazardly. I noticed a large old mirror leaning against the wall. As I approached, I saw movement in its reflection, but when I turned around, there was nothing there. I looked back at the mirror and saw a figure standing behind me. It was tall and thin, with elongated limbs and a featureless face. My blood ran cold as I recognized the figure from countless creepypastas. It was Slender Man. Section 6. Glimpses of the unseen. Slender Man stood motionless, his presence chilling. I felt an overwhelming sense of dread. The air seemed to crackle with electricity. My mind screamed at me to run, but my body was frozen in place. The figure remained still, watching me with unseen eyes. I blinked, and he was gone. The oppressive atmosphere lifted slightly, but the fear remained. I knew I had to keep moving. Staying in one place for too long felt dangerous. I left the basement and continued exploring the asylum. As I roamed the dark hallways, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Shadows seemed to dance at the edge of my vision. I saw glimpses of figures darting around corners, only to disappear when I approached. The boundaries between reality and nightmare were blurring. Every step I took felt like a descent into madness. The asylum was a maze of horrors, each turn revealing something more terrifying than the last. Section 7. Lost in the Backrooms. I found myself in a section of the asylum that felt different. The walls were a sickly yellow and the fluorescent lights flickered ominously. It felt like I had stepped into another dimension, the infamous Backrooms. The endless maze-like corridors stretched before me. The air was thick with a sense of desolation. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional hum of the lights. I wandered the corridors trying to find my way back, but every turn led to more of the same. It was as if the asylum itself was shifting around me. I heard distant footsteps echoing in the empty space. They sounded deliberate, as if someone or something was following me. My heart pounded in my chest as I quickened my pace, desperate to escape the labyrinth. But no matter how fast I moved, I couldn't shake the feeling of being pursued. The footsteps grew louder, more insistent. The backrooms were alive, and they were trying to trap me in their endless, nightmarish embrace. Section 8. The Presence of Slender Man. The footsteps stopped suddenly, leaving an eerie silence. I turned a corner and saw him again, Slender Man. He stood at the end of the corridor, his faceless head tilted slightly as if observing me. The sight filled me with terror. I could feel his malevolent presence. I backed away slowly, my mind racing. He remained still, but I knew he could strike at any moment. The walls seemed to close in around me, the air thick with tension. It was a standoff, a test of wills. I had to find a way out before he decided to make his move. I turned and ran, not caring where I was going. The corridors blurred as I sprinted, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I could feel his presence behind me, an unseen force driving me forward. I stumbled into a large room, collapsing against the wall. The silence was deafening, but the sense of dread remained. I knew Slender Man was still out there, watching, waiting. The asylum was his domain, and I was merely a trespasser. Section 9. The Final Hour. The clock was ticking. My 24 hours in the asylum were almost up, but the final hour felt like an eternity. I moved cautiously, every sense heightened. The asylum seemed to grow darker, more oppressive. The walls seemed to pulse with a life of their own. I found myself in the old chapel. The pews were broken, and the stained glass windows were shattered. The air was thick with dust and decay. It felt like a place where the veil between worlds was thin, where the spirits could reach out and touch the living. As I explored the chapel, I heard a faint music box tune. It was hauntingly beautiful, yet filled with sorrow. I followed the sound to an old, dusty music box lying on the altar. As I reached out to touch it, the tune stopped abruptly. The silence that followed was oppressive. I felt a cold hand on my shoulder and a whisper in my ear. "Leave now, or you will never leave." I turned around, but there was no one there. The asylum was giving me one final warning. Section 10. Escape and Reflection. The last few minutes were a blur of fear and desperation. I ran through the asylum, my footsteps echoing in the empty halls. Every shadow seemed to reach out, every sound a potential threat. The building seemed to resist my escape, its labyrinthine corridors twisting and turning. I finally burst through the main entrance, gasping for breath. The outside air was a relief, a stark contrast to the oppressive atmosphere inside. I looked back at the asylum, its dark silhouette looming against the night sky. It felt like I had escaped a living nightmare. The experience left me shaken. The asylum was more than just an abandoned building. It was a place where the past lingered, where the line between reality and nightmare blurred. It was a testament to the horrors that once took place within its walls. If you enjoyed this journey into the unknown, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments or on social media. Have you ever explored an abandoned place? What did you find? Let's keep the conversation going.